morning.
Good morning, Robert.
Welcome to Unity Spiritual Center, Pflugerville. Topic today is illusions. And I want to warn you, we are going deeper into the rabbit hole, if you're familiar with that. What I'm talking about is true spiritual path, and some of the conversations that occur on the spiritual path aren't necessarily the path of the secular world. So it's a very, very interesting thing. First thing I want to talk about is Genesis. And in my article this week, I brought up the Genesis, first chapter of Genesis, verse number 31. And in verse 31, it says, at the end, at the creation, it says, "And God saw everything he had made, and behold, it was very good." Period. Now, does anybody hear anything else? Because there isn't anything else. He said everything is very good. So, everything that God made is very good. Now, what does that include? Everything. Okay? Now, here's another issue, because I'm not living in a world that looks very good. We have discrimination. We have problems in diseases. We have this, we have that. We have, we can't get racial things together. We have a hard time getting gender things together. And there's all this, what we call disturbances or dissonance in our culture. And at the same time that there's poverty, there's great wealth. So it looks unfair. And it looks like it's not, there's somehow somebody got more than I did, or somebody got more than you did, or somebody doesn't think the same way I do, so and I'm being persecuted, or whatever. So we have all these stories. Now, what I want to do is go on to Genesis. Now, that's Genesis 1:31, where it says, "And everything that was made, God saw is very good." If you go on to Genesis 3, in verse 22, and I'm going over here. By the way, this is the Lamsa Bible. Verse 22, "Then the Lord God said, Behold, the man has become like one of us to know good and evil." I want you to take that in. What he's saying here, and understand that Genesis and the Bible is metaphors, ideas, describing, if you will, the spiritual path of man. So it's saying here that the Lord God, or that energy we call source or divinity in the world, said, man has become like one of us. Well, who is us? And see, nobody talks about that, because we objectify God and say God is a thing out there somewhere. But this is saying God is one of us. So there's a plural function here, which is never addressed, but it says it in the Bible. And I was taught when I was raised in I'm not going to say fundamental church, but you know what I'm talking about, that the Bible is in the Bible, it's true. So how do we deal with that? So maybe God is part of all of us. And then the next statement is, and to know good and evil. So we are in a position to know good and evil. Everybody got it? So, here we are. Everything's very, very good. So at some point in time, let's say in creation, there was perfection. So there is a model or a code or an energy of very good everywhere present. Well, how come it ain't true in my world? So, and I use the word ain't on purpose just to get through, okay? It's called disruption. But the idea behind the whole thing is that we have been given choice on what to think. We're all familiar with the law of attraction. The law of attraction says, what I think, I create. So we are creators or co-creators with the divine energy or source. Everybody with me? Because I want to stay logical as much as we can. Because remember, the ego has a tendency to be logical to take us off track. So I want to stay over here on the spiritual path. So the spiritual path says that I have a choice to think what I want to think. And, you ready for this? The world I experience is the world that I have created. Everybody take a deep breath. And that's what I mean when I'm saying we're going down the rabbit hole and we're going to look in depth at a true spiritual understanding. And what is spiritual understanding? I and the Father are one. There isn't anything out there other than my thinking. And Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within. And he encouraged us to go into our closet, close the door, and be one with the Father or Spirit. So how often do we do that? Anybody agree? We spend a lot of quiet time because we're so caught up in the world, all this stuff is going on. So the idea, let's go back and look at that. Law of attraction says what I think about, I create. And pretty much quantum physics has identified that as my thoughts change outcomes. So if you take that into its true spiritual understanding, my thoughts create my world. So if I believe that I'm poor, what do I create in my life? I have to. Because the law of attraction works all the time under all circumstances. So the truth is, there is a code out there that is very good all the time. And how come I'm not experiencing it? See, that's the craziness of this whole idea that there is a perfection, there is a state of being, there is a state of returning to the Father, like the parable of the prodigal son. That's a metaphor for being out in the world, like the prodigal son was out in the fields eating the same thing the pigs were eating, and suddenly he woke up and said, I have a rich father, I can go back and ask forgiveness, and everything, he will take care of me. I'm not going to have to eat. Anybody agree we feel like we're out in the field sometimes eating with the pigs? Because that's a metaphor of understanding that life has its issues. And things happen. People cut me off in traffic. People diss me, if we could use that terminology. I'm discriminated against. People don't like me. All that kind of things. And who is creating the world? See, if everything's very good, something had to come in and change it to away from very good. Everybody there? I want you to understand that. If everything's very good, who changed it? And who has the power to change it? It says right here we have the ability to distinguish between good and bad, or good and evil. So maybe it's just us as individuals and our thinking blinking in a big cloud that I call the oversoul. So it's a very, very interesting idea. Jesus, it says in the Bible, now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. And that's the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians, the love chapter. And it says love is the only answer to everything. And I'm taking that whole chapter and condensing it into one phrase. But it says love is the answer to everything, and love is the energy that we know is God. So if love is everything, and it ends that chapter by saying, now we see through a glass darkly. Has anybody ever tried to look in a mirror that's all smudgy and dirty? You can't see. It's a distorted image. So that's what's happened to us. There's this perfect image of who we are at creation, and we've allowed centuries of negative programming to affect the subconscious level. And the Bible says we go back 6 and 7 generations. And then there's now a science called epigenetics. The DNA is transferred down 6 and 7 generations. Isn't that interesting? There's another thing that they've now proven in epigenetics, that an event I have, I have a trauma, something happens in my life, and actually my DNA is changed, and that DNA from the trauma I experienced is transferred on 6 or 7 generations down. I want you to understand that. That's how many generations, how many great-great-great-grandfathers do I have in motherhood? So all that stuff is coming down, all right? And then I wonder why life isn't the original code. And I don't know about you, but I get involved in the political scene sometimes, and I let it affect me. Why did he say that? Okay? So I get all involved in this stuff, which is completely programming everything that's going on for me. Now, if I hear over and over and over again, those of you in marketing know the more repetition somebody hears, the more they're going to believe it. So if I hear over and over and over again, they tell me in marketing it's 10, 11, 12 impressions that that's true, I believe it. And so it's called, anybody familiar with the idea of brainwashing? So we are being overdrawn or overwritten with all this stuff. So what's the answer? And I just to give you a little bit more idea of this, Course of Love here says that whether you know it or not, we are creating our world. Now, that's the idea, but let's get over here. What do I have to do? And that's why this, the song we just sang is great. Okay? You picked it well.
Thank you.
On top of my Bible. There it is. Okay. And the song, I want to read this. Okay, it says, show me how to be, when I awake and the sun lights my face, and the world holds me its warm embrace, show me how to be all that I can be. And if you go back and understand that all you can be is already in you. It's already part of you. You know, everybody, you stop and think about it. We all know deep, deep within, we should be doing this, or whatever it is, okay? You ever meet somebody with a real passion? Because all of a sudden they've got an idea of, hey, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It always amazes me when somebody can start singing, like Bruce's talent, right? Or playing a piano, or doing something. It's a skill that's within them, okay? So that's part of their perfect pattern. So the idea of perfect pattern is you have a perfect pattern. I have a perfect pattern. And that pattern has been there, and that's who we are to be expressed. But then the fears of the world come in on top of that and override it. So it says, and he'll heal me back to God. And then it goes on down here, when my life doesn't go the way I planned and my days get completely out of hand. Anybody ever had one of them? It's kind of like, gee, this isn't what I planned today. Or you know, somebody says a nasty word to me, or something happens. The truth is, somehow, my world and the overriding of my subconscious mind created that input. Okay? There's a famous writer, I don't remember his name, doesn't matter, but he says, life comes at you the way you have planned it, which is a big deal. But then it says here, help me know that I am where I ought to be, and heal me back to God. So it's the parable of the prodigal son returning back to the Father, which means going on a spiritual path and cleaning up the stuff. Yes, I'm going to share this with you. This is A Course of Love. And A Course of Love is a new idea, new thing that we've got 2 study groups going on. And we've been doing this for 4 or 5 years now. And it's kind of fascinating. And I want to share this with you. Close your eyes, and this is chapter 3, and it's called The First Lesson. Close your eyes and all that you have become accustomed to seeing, and you will see the light. I want you to, I'm going to say that again. Close your eyes. Stop looking at the world through your physical eyes. On all that you have become accustomed to viewing, and you will see the light. So here's the idea. In the prodigal son, it says in the Bible, he woke up. Understand that. He woke up and understood who he was and what his inheritance was. So he woke up. Anybody heard the word enlightened or becoming aware? Okay, so the idea is we are in the process of waking up. Sometimes, anybody agree you need to shove somebody to wake up? I'm not easy sometimes to wake up in the morning. Okay? Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes I need a push. So that's known as life. And then down here it says, you give all meaning to everything, and thus you populate your world with angels and with demons. So you have good things and you have bad things. But it says you populate your world with them. And their status determined by who would help you and who would thwart you or keep you away from what you want. So we name people and we say, this is a good one, this is a bad one. And then, thus do you determine your friends and your enemies. Anybody have friends and enemies? Okay, and then what happens, and thus you have friends who become enemies and enemies who become friends. Have you ever had that happen? See, this is life unfolding according to the programs that we have accepted. Then it goes on and says, thus do you determine your friends and who become, and it goes on here, it says, in all scenarios, you remain the maker of your world, which is the key to spiritual understanding. So whether I like it or not, everything I experience is of my own making. It's very interesting. Last week, I asked people to tell me their experience of the conference. Everybody remember that? And we had people speaking. And in that process, I was watching my language and I was watching other people's language. Here's an idea. If I internalize and believe everything, the kingdom of heaven is within, and I am a child of God, then everything centers from me. And if I really believe the kingdom of heaven is within, and everything that happens out there started in here. So it's called responsibility, which the world doesn't want to hear about. That's why I said earlier, we're going to be diving deeper. So, you ready for the next step? And I asked people to say their experience. So my experience was, I experienced this. Okay, now, in the world out there, people have a tendency to become victims. So the idea is, you did this to me, they did this to me, we did this to me, anybody familiar with it happened, it did this to me. But the truth is, let's go over here and change this now into I did this to me, which is a huge step and it's difficult. But there's nobody out there doing anything, and the only reason anybody's out there doing anything is I prompted that conversation. Do you ever notice some people kind of sail through life? Or some people have lots of money, or some people have lots of health, and so what does that mean? Who made the choice in that lifetime? And this is the difficult part, because it's understanding that I am a child of God, you're a child of God, and it's the understanding that as I go through life, what is reflected back to me is what I consider myself, or my thinking. Now, is that easy? No. That's why, remember I made the warning. But that's the joy thing. See, the difficult thing to understand is what I think about, I create. The wonderful thing to understand is what I think about, I create, which means I can change where I am if I get on a program. Now, the issue is, remember we talked about these 6 and 7 generations, and we talked about the world around us, and it's, when I first started this whole thing, I figured, okay, I can say affirmations and change my subconscious mind. And here I am, quite a few years later, still doing it. Because the energy is so overwhelming. The only answer is to go back to spirit and ask for forgiveness and make the connection with spirit. In other words, it's belief. Okay? And it takes time. I was looking at the daily word there. It's really fascinating to me. There's never any accidents. And the daily word says, I am one with the loving guidance of divine mind. So I'd like to take this and put it into context that what I think about, I create. There's nobody out there doing anything to me other than me creating these issues. Okay? And so if I take that in, Spirit expresses through all of creation as loving guidance, maintaining perfect order in all things. That sounds crazy, to trust Spirit to change things and maybe heal my toe, or heal my relationship with my wife, or heal my relationship with the next door neighbor. But it's saying Spirit expresses through all of creation as loving guidance, maintaining perfect order in all things. Today I focus and take time to gain direction in all that I do, since my essence is of spirit. So your essence is of spirit. That's we go back to, God said they are one of us. So we are all one in spirit. Right? So, and I remember the truth whenever I feel confused, conflicted, or uncertain of what my next step should be. Okay? So, okay, good. My mortal mind is limited, relying on yesterday's fears to make decisions. Okay, I want you to think about that. If my mortal mind is working on yesterday, anybody agree yesterday had its problems? So I keep repeating the fears and problems that occurred yesterday, and yesterday, and yesterday. Okay, so today's a new world. And I'm asking us as a community, us as individuals, to create a new day. Because the new day is what I'm thinking. And if I learn to rely on spirit rather than the world, things work. So much more to talk about. And I'm like, okay, it's like, one of the issues, when we talk on Sunday morning, and we share ideas on Sunday morning, the idea is that you are a child of God. You are spirit in expression. Again, the Bible tells me that the kingdom of heaven is within. Jesus even said, those things I do, ye shall do, and even greater things. So how do we get that through to you? How do we get that through to a skeptical public? How do we get that through to people that are so ingrained in sin, so ingrained in guilt, that I can't go there? And the only answer is, God is within. The Christ is who you are. So I appreciate you listening. I'd like to go on for another hour, but I'm not going to. Because it's like, it's so easy.